Myself, Professor Komal Mahajan. Today, we start with the nerve tissue. Learning objective is to describe the characteristic of nerve tissue, describe types of nerve tissue. Content of nerve tissue is introduction to nerve tissue, types of nerve tissue, neurons and neuroglia. Key takeaway. Nerve tissue is one of four major classes of tissue and makes up the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Integration and communication are the two major functions of nerve tissue. Nerve tissue contains two categories of cells. First one is neuron and second one is neuroglia. Neurons are highly specialized nerve cells that generate and conduct nerve impulses. Neuroglia are supporting cells that provide physical support, removes the debris and provide electrical insulation. Now next is the introduction of nerve tissue. Nerve tissue is one of four major classes of tissue, and these four classes of tissue is epithelial tissue, connective tissue, nervous tissue and the muscular tissue. It is specialized tissue found in the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Next is types of nerve tissue. Two principal cell types of nerve tissue. First one is the neurons, which is an excitable cell that transmit electrical signals. Second one is the supporting cell, which is a neuroglia or glial cells that surrounds and wrap the neurons. I think so there is one question. Define neuron and classify. First one is the neuron. The neuron is structural and functional unit of nervous system. Neurons is a nerve cell which transmit the electrical impulses or the messages. Next is the microscopic anatomy of neurons. All neurons have a cell body and which is called as the soma, which contains a nucleus, organelles and modified endoplasmic reticulum, which is called as the nasal body. Extension of the soma from nerve such as a dendrites which conduct the nerve impulses towards the soma, and axon which conduct the nerve impulses away from the soma. It means to another neuron or the effector organ. The number of dendrites ranges from 1 to 1000, 1 in unipolar and bipolar neuron and thousands in multipolar neuron. All neuron contains only one axon. Nodes of Franever. Gaps or nodes in the myelin sheath. The longer axons are enclosed by a lipoprotein substances which is called as the myelin sheath, and they produced by type of neuroglia cells which is called as the Schwann cells. And these neurons get again divided into the two types, myelinated and the non-myelinated. This myelinated neuron contains the myelin sheath and non-myelinated neuron absence of the myelin sheath. In the presence of the myelin sheath, the electrical impulses transmit fastly by the jumping action, and in non-myelin sheath, the electrical impulses is transmitted by the step by step. That's why the myelinated sheath transmit the electrical impulses fastly than the unmyelinated sheath. Let's see in the diagram, there are the presence of the dendrites. Again next one is these are the axon. Again these are the myelin sheath. They are the soma or the cell body. Next one is the gap is the nodes of Raniwar, and these are the axon terminal. Classification of neurons. Both the structural and functional features are used to classify the various neurons in the body. First one is structural classification. The structurally neurons are classified according to number of processes extending from the cell bodies. First one is the multipolar neurons. These multipolar neurons usually have several dendrites and only one axon. Most neurons in the brain and spinal cord are this type as well as all motor neurons. Second one is the bipolar neuron. Have a one main dendrite and one axon. They are found in the retina of eye, inner ear and olfactory area of the brain. Third one is unipolar neurons. The unipolar neurons have dendrites and one axon that are fused together to form a continuous process that emerges from the cell body. These neurons are more appropriately called as pseudo-unipolar neurons because they begin in the embryo as a bipolar neuron. During the development, the dendrites and axon fuse together and become a single process. These are the diagram of multipolar neuron, bipolar neuron and the unipolar neuron. This multipolar neuron contains the one long axon and many short dendrons. In the bipolar neuron, they contain the one short axon and one dendron. And in unipolar neuron, they contain the axon and dendron get fused together. The dendrites of most unipolar neurons function as a sensory receptor that detect a sensory stimuli such as touch, pressure, pain and thermal stimuli. The trigger zone for nerve impulses are in a unipolar neuron is at the junction of the dendrites and the axon. The nerve impulses then propagate towards the synaptic and the bulbs. The cell bodies of most unipolar neurons are located in the ganglia of spinal and cranial nerves. The types of sensory receptor found in the dendrites of a unipolar neuron determines the type of sensory stimulus that the unipolar neuron can detect. In addition to the structural classification scheme just described, some neurons are named for the histologist who first described them or for an aspect of their shape or appearance. For example, includes the Purkinje cells in the cerebellum and pyramidal cells found in the cerebral cortex of the brain, which have pyramidal shaped cell body. These are the Purkinje cells and these are the pyramidal cells, which are the pyramidal in shape. Now next is functional classification of neurons. Functionally, neurons are classified according to the direction in which the nerve impulses or action potential is conveyed with respect to the central nervous system. In that, first one is the sensory, is also called as the afferent neurons. Either contain sensory receptor at their distal end, it means the dendrites, or are located just after the sensory receptor that are separate cells. Once an appropriate stimulus activates a sensory receptor, the sensory neuron forms an action potential in its axon and the action potential is conveyed into the central nervous system through a cranial or spinal nerves. Most sensory neurons are the unipolar in structure. Second one is the motor or efferent neurons. Convey action potentials away from the central nervous system to effector in the periphery through cranial or the spinal nerves. Motor neurons are multipolar in structure. Third one is the interneuron or associated neuron. They are mainly located within the central nervous system between sensory and motor neuron. Interneurons integrate incoming sensory information from sensory neurons and then elicit a motor response by activating the appropriate motor neurons. Most interneurons are multipolar in structure. Now in this diagram, the sensation is passed to the central nervous system or peripheral nervous system, and they integrate this message and this message again back to the muscles. Next is puzzle. Find the words. Second one is the neuroglia. There are the 6 types of the neuroglia. In that, 4 are found in the central nervous system and the remaining 2 are found in the peripheral nervous system. First one is the neuroglia of the CNS. There are the 4 types. First one is the astrocyte, second one is microglial cells, third one is the ependymal cells, and fourth one is the oligodendrocytes. Second one is the neuroglia of the peripheral nervous system. Schwann cells and the satellite cells. Astrocytes. Most abundant, versatile and highly branched glial cells cling to neuron, cover the capillaries. Function of astrocyte is to support and brace the neurons, anchor neurons to their nutrient supply, guide migration of young neuron, and control the chemical environment. Second one is the microglial cells. The microglial, it means small ovoid cells with a spiny process. Function is the phagocytosis. It means the engulfing the foraging materials and the debris. Third one is ependymal cells. Ependymal cells, which is the squamous to columnar shaped cells, which are line central cavities of brain and the spinal cord. Function is form a porous layer through which substance diffuse between the interstitial fluid and the cerebrospinal fluid. Fourth one is oligodendrocytes. Oligodendrocytes, which is the branch cell that trap the central nervous system nerve fibers. Process of oligodendrocytes are responsible for forming and maintaining the myelin sheath around the central nervous system axon. Neuroglia of the PNS include the satellite cell and the second one is the Schwann cells. First one is the Schwann cells. These cells encircle the peripheral nervous system axon. Like the oligodendrocyte, they form the myelin sheath around the axon. A single oligodendrocyte myelinates several axons, but each Schwann cell myelinates a single axon. A single Schwann cell can also enclose as many as 20 or more unmyelinated axons. Schwann cells participate in axon regeneration, which is more easily accomplished in the peripheral nervous system than in the central nervous system. Second one is the satellite cell. These flat cells surround the cell bodies of neuron of the peripheral nervous system ganglia. Beside providing structural support, satellite cells regulate the exchange of materials between the neuronal cell bodies and the interstitial cell body. Here is the chapter is over. Now summary of the chapter here. Now we see the nerve tissue. There are the two types of nerve tissue, neurons and the neuroglia. First one is the neurons. These neurons are the structural and functional unit of nervous system. There are two types. There are the two types of the neurons. First one is the structural classification and second one is the functional classification. The structural classification get divided into the three types. First one is multipolar, second one is the bipolar and third one is the unipolar neuron. Second one is the functional classification, get again divided into the three types. First one is the sensory or afferent neuron, second one is the motor or efferent neuron and third one is the interneuron. Next, second one is the neuroglia. Again this neuroglia get divided into the six types. In that the six types, four types are of the central nervous system and two types are found in the peripheral nervous system. Again this neuroglia in central nervous system, first one is astrocyte, microglial cell, ependymal cells, oligodendrocytes. Now the next one is the in the peripheral nervous system, they include the Schwann cells and the satellite cells. Now it's time to solve the quiz. Here you open the link, put your name and surname, type your email address and start the quiz. Now solve the question, take the answer and go to the next. Again solve the next question, go again the next. And here you show your result. And here I got the 100 points. Now next is the study materials or the reference materials. Thank you.